It's Monday, and that so happens to be the day that I like to talk about monsters. Hello, and welcome to Monster Mondays. I am Jeff Harbuckle, co-host of the podcast Film Seizure, that you can catch each Wednesday at filmseizure.com or at a number of podcast providers online. I hope you're a fan of Larry Cohen, because over the next month or so, we're going to talk about not one, but two of his cult classics. But the first of these two really has the stuff. Yes, it's 1985's The Stuff, and this is the third time we've discussed Larry Cohen. In the early days of the series, I looked at Q the Winged Serpent, and then just about a couple of years back, I talked about 1976's God Told Me To. The Stuff was one that I've known even back as a kid, even though I didn't watch it until it hit The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs way back in the first season of that series on Shudder. Now, I knew of The Stuff because I had a friend in elementary school who had a poster of it from the video store. And it wasn't the theatrical poster that had the guy's face that had the stuff coming out of his eyes and mouth as he screamed. And then there was the big warning that talked about what the stuff would do to you. But this was the one that looked like the videotape box with, it was kind of drawn like almost like a comic book cover, like a stylized comic book cover or a painting, with people getting melted by the stuff as it oozes out of the refrigerator. I love that image so much. I mean, yes, it's more cartoony, but then again, the movie itself has quite a bit of a sense of humor, particularly when one character shows up in the last act of the movie. But yeah, the movie is kind of aping on the idea of how television markets products to consumers and how consumers become brand obsessed. But I think I'll be talking about that much more later. But what made up The Stuff was basically mashed potato flakes, polyurethane foam, and firefighting foam to replicate the kind of thick marshmallowy cream. And for when actors ate the stuff, the effect substances were swapped out for things like yogurt, whipped cream, and tofutti, which is a brand of ice cream that for soy-based, dairy-free ice cream for those who are lactose intolerant. For when characters fell victim to the stuff, puppets were used to simulate the final effects of what the stuff would do to somebody. Now, Michael Moriarty is once again the star of a Larry Cohen movie. He was the squirrely lead in Q and will ultimately appear in 4 Larry Cohen films. Other recognizable actors who appeared in this were Danny Aiello and Paul Sorvino, but there are a few cameos too, like Brooke Adams, Abe Vigoda, and Clara Peller of the Where's the Beef fame. They all appear in commercials for the stuff, although Brooke Adams doesn't appear until the post-credit scene. But Paul Sorvino's daughter, Mira Sorvino, shows up somewhere too, as one day she came to set to visit her dad and was put in as a factory guard as an extra. However, the member of the cast that is the most interesting is Garrett Morris. Now, Morris is probably best known to people as an original member of the Saturday Night Live cast and primarily stuck to comedies most of his career. In fact, his role in this is actually a comedic role. But he was also a singer and studied at Juilliard and Dillard University, and he performed with the Belafonte folk singers who backed Harry Belafonte when they formed before recording before recording their own albums and doing their own stuff. And then Morris went on to record a 1960 album with Pete Seeger and Gary Cowan called South African Freedom Songs. And why he's the most interesting inclusion in this movie is that he was not Larry Cohen's choice. He wanted the up-and-coming star Arsenio Hall to play the character that he had in mind for him, but New World Pictures wanted a more recognizable face, and Morris was it. But Morris did not enjoy working with Cohen. I mean, he hated it so much that he won't talk about Larry Cohen, sticking to the old adage of, if you have nothing nice to say nothing at all. But as the movie begins, we start in Georgia, and a bunch of workers at a quarry discover a white, creamy stuff that is kind of sweet to the taste and smell. And one of the workers says if enough of that stuff bubbles up out of the ground, they could sell it to people. And sure enough, they did just that. And it's a sort of addictive, kind of a dessert fluff called The Stuff. Now, a kid whose parents eat the stuff thinks the white marshmallowy cream was kind of moving on its own in the fridge, but when he and his father look again, it isn't moving. And his dad scolds his son kind of harshly for being up in the middle of the night when he just kind of woke up from, just out of bed, just out of the ordinary, nothing. He was not doing anything mischievous or anything like that. And the dad's kind of a jerk. But the next morning, the boy named Jason tries to prevent his parents and brother from eating more of the stuff because he thinks the goop is alive. And it turns out that his father, before going back to bed the night before when he told Jason to go to sleep, stayed up a little bit longer to eat more of the stuff. But then we meet Mo Rutherford, a former FBI agent who now works in industrial espionage. And he's been hired by the heads of, for a lack of a better term, Big Ice Cream, to find out whether whatever he can about the stuff and essentially destroy the company from the inside, based on what he finds. And the heads of all the ice cream manufacturers are upset that they could not figure out on their own what the ingredients are of the stuff. And what's more, whatever the secret formula is in the stuff, it's seemingly some sort of bacteria that by happy accident just so happens to taste good. And the makers of the stuff have repeated this happy accident time and time and time again, which is not easy to do with something living like bacteria. Also, the makers of the stuff have never revealed what their quote-unquote secret formula is to it, and that is something that is actually protected. They even make comment that Coca-Cola's ingredients and Coca-Cola's formula is secret, and they don't have to reveal that to anyone. So one of the guys that Mo visits is Mr. Vickers, and he was part of the team at the FDA who approved the stuff for production and consumption. And as Vickers talks with Mo, he says that at the time that they tested it, it wasn't called the stuff, and that's because Mo has also met Nicole, who was an advertising executive that the stuff company hired to basically sell the stuff to the public. However, because it was a dessert food and not something like a drug or some sort of prescription, there did not have to be as deep of an investigation into what makes the stuff edible. So they didn't test it long, but Vickers says it was an absolute pleasure testing the stuff because he loves it. He can't get enough of it. In fact, he even feeds it to a scary-looking Doberman. And as he gets some documents that he can share with Mo about the testing and the process that they took, Mo peeks around in Vickers' house and finds that, he's got a whole, he's got a whole kitchen full of the stuff. So, he's really into it. And driving around later that night, in fact, super late at night, 2:30 a.m., Mo finds that the local stuff franchise is still busy as if it's just after dinner time in the peak time of day to go and buy and eat dessert. Meanwhile, back at the Vickers place, that dog, that Doberman, is attacking Mr. Vickers with some sort of white creamy foam coming out of its mouth before ultimately attacking and killing the guy. Next up on Mo's investigation is Stater, Virginia, where the entire town is essentially clearing out. There he finds Chocolate Chip Charlie, and also known as Charles Hobbs, who was a candy and dessert executive whose company he lost when basically all of the board of directors, including his own brother and nephews, basically sold him out and bought him out because it ended up becoming folded into the stuff company. So Charlie is now basically destitute, and the company was located in Virginia, and they begin kind of investigating what happened and who's in charge of the makers of the stuff so that Mo can do his job and Charlie can basically take back his company. Now, those who remain in Virginia act strange and often say things in the first person plural, like leave us alone or we aren't doing anything to anyone. Everyone else has effectively relocated to the same town in Georgia called Midland. And they soon discover what few people are left in Stater, well, they form a mob and chase Charlie and Mo. And as the two fight their way out, as they punch people, like they punch a guy, his jaw will fall off. Or if they punch somebody in the stomach, it basically punches a hole in the guy's stomach, effectively meaning that these people are now hollow. It's not long before people who are associated with or addicted to the stuff know that Mo is investigating and potentially getting in the way of whatever these people's plans are. And what that is that the stuff is some sort of extraterrestrial compound or living organism that effectively addicts anyone who consumes it and eventually infects and control their brains and turn them into zombies. Essentially, they're vessels for this kind of collective goop that came from another planet. Now, Mo learns about Jason, the kid that has the intense hatred of the stuff, and he wants to find this kid and talk to him to see what he knows about why he is so anti-stuff. And speaking of Jason, his parents have replaced all the food in the house with just carton after carton after carton of the stuff. And his family wants Jason to eat the stuff, and they talk about how, they talk about it as if they're in the commercials or infomercials, like describing how good it tastes, describing how it can help you lose weight, and describing how it's made of these particular organisms that, like this helpful bacteria. It comes off kind of creepy, and they all tell Jason to stay in his room and eat an entire carton of the stuff, and then he can rejoin the family. But instead, Jason, still not trusting what this stuff is, flushes it down the toilet, despite it trying to crawl itself out, and replaces the stuff with shaving cream. But it's not long before his family figure out that he's faking it, and he has to run away from them and out into the neighborhood, just as it so happens, as Mo arrives and tells him to get in the car so that they can get out of there. Mo, Jason, and that advertising exec responsible for the stuff's popularity, Nicole, who is now almost instantaneously became Mo's girlfriend. I think there's an entire scene cut out of them kind of romancing each other, but whatever. They fly to Midland, Georgia, and Nicole is able to get Mo and her into a meeting with the stuff company, considering her role as the stuff's advertising lady. Now, Jason has to run away from the private jet when the stuff kills the pilot, and he ends up at a mining company owned by the same firm that produces the stuff, and discovers that this is where all of the factory workers of the stuff basically go to pick up like these tanker trucks to basically get the stuff transported to the factories. And he ends up getting stuck in one of those tanker trucks while Mo and Nicole spend the night at a motel. And the stuff happens to be in one of their pillows and attempts to smother Mo when it latches onto his face, covering his mouth and nose. Nicole burns it off of his face, and the guy who runs the motel storms in, telling them to once again leave them alone before the whole mattress reveals itself to be full of the stuff. They escape, but discover something important. Fire can hurt the stuff. And as it turns out, Nicole and Mo discover a lake where the trucks basically suck the stuff up out of the ground. And while at the lake of the stuff, there are announcements about how the good work that all of these workers are doing that will help end world hunger and so forth. So they're planning on transporting this across the world, which would effectively, basically give this organism access to every single human being on Earth. And now Mo places some charges near the lake before attempting to steal one of the trucks to prove that the stuff is, well, bad stuff. And luckily he finds the truck that Jason got stuck in and drives off with it before the stuff being pumped into the tank drowns him. It is important that Jason talks about how the stuff is kind of communicating with him telepathically, because he says, you're in my head and you want me to do this, you want me to do what my family did, basically. So it has some limited telepathic ability to convince people to eat it. But Mo blows the side of the quarry up, which effectively destroys the lake. Now, Mo, Nicole, and Brian go to see a retired Army colonel named Spears. And when this guy shows up, it's nothing but a kind of a comedy at this point, because he is bonkers. This is Paul Sorvino playing Spears. But Mo tells Spears about the stuff and how it effectively is destroying American life. He knows how to talk to this guy who is very straight-laced, conservative American military man, and he kind of makes it sound like that this was a commie plot. So this colonel has his own small militia that will ultimately fight the stuff-infected company guards, and the militia invades the factory. And as they invade, they tried to, like, the colonel wants to actually get into a firefight with the factory guards, but what they find instead, that all the stuff-infected people have been found dead. The colonel believes that they've killed themselves, robbing him of his opportunity to kill them. But they're all basically hollowed out husks, as the stuff has oozed out of them before they could be killed by the militia. Now, all that stuff chases after Nicole and Jason, and that, as well as all the rest of the stuff inside the plant, busts out through the wall and oozes all over the ground outside the factory. So the militia then flies to Atlanta, where the colonel owns a couple of radio stations to broadcast information about the stuff to the public. And before the broadcast, Chocolate Chip Charlie returns to get in on the message so that he can make a statement, because his company was stolen from him. He still wants to get that word out there. Now, Nicole and Charlie go into a room to kind of go over what the message is, and this is where he reveals that he's one of the quote-unquote stuffies, as Mo calls them, the zombies taken over by the stuff. And he starts spouting stuff out of his enlarged mouth as his head effectively just kind of comes apart. Mo electrocutes the stuff and saves her and Jason from it. And they make the broadcast, and sure enough, it works. Those who weren't completely taken over by the stuff rebel against the product and burn the supplies, and ultimately leads to destroying the franchises. Yes, thousands died, but the government worked on compensation to be made to the survivors. Mo visits the head of the stuff company, who reveals that they have a new product called The Taste, which is how the stuff company is able to work with the ice cream companies. The Taste is made of 12% stuff, 88% ice cream, and it's enough stuff to keep consumers addicted, but not enough stuff to turn them into zombies. How do they know? Well, they tested it on the small Illinois town. So Mo and Jason decide, well, you know what? It's time for them to get some just desserts. And they serve them cartons of the stuff. And they basically force the two businessmen in charge of the Taste to eat at gunpoint until there's none left. And the movie ends with the two businessmen completely addicted to the stuff, and police sirens closing in on them. Those still addicted end up buying and selling the stuff like drugs. All right, so let's talk about three things I like about the stuff. First, you gotta love a character like what Michael Moriarty plays. The more of a dirtbag he can be is best, really. Now, he's not quite the dirtbag he was in Q, but when you first meet him, he is this very slick and underhanded kind of guy in a lot of ways, that especially in how he goes about getting information, or kind of implanting himself into companies. The way he talks to people, like I said, is kind of slick with this down-home Southern accent. He's smarmy, and I am not sure there's ever been an actor quite like Michael Moriarty in being a smarmy and squirrely fella. But damn it, in both this and Q, of course, both being Larry Cohen movies, he's intensely watchable and compelling as an actor and as a character. Plus, all of his scenes with Garrett Morris are silly. And I know that, Morris didn't like Cohen, but I have to believe that Morris and Moriarty got along very well, because they have a ton of chemistry on screen in that one sequence that they primarily share together. Second, I feel like this is a movie that goes hand in hand with another 80s commentary about how things are run in a late stage capitalist world, and how business basically relates to the public, and that movie would be RoboCop. This one is a bit more of a broad parody than RoboCop, but how can you not see the comparison? In The Stuff, you have a product that is almost solely designed to consume the consumer, which capitalism is also designed to basically trap a public into consumerism spiral, and that's just how that works. I mean, so you've got those who are addicted by the product or already completely too far gone and now actual zombies for the product who either want to be left alone, about their spending and their consumer habits, or speak to it like brand ambassadors. It becomes creepy how much people are basically, for a lack of a better term, hypnotized by the product and, in a way, the advertising. And, honestly, I kind of get it in a lot of ways. In one way, I was a kid when this movie came out and commenting on the lifting of government regulations and the overall change in how things are advertised and consumed. Hell, I mean, I was the generation that was being marketed to on the reg every day after school or every Saturday morning with the cartoons I was consuming with my eyes. Advertising campaigns would make certain cigarettes or alcoholic drinks look cool or make the user part of an in-group if they partook in that particular brand of smoke or beer. It's something that, even though some changes have been made in how things can be advertised on TV or what have you, you see influencers now on social media making you want to be part of an in-group to buy a particular brand of, bottled water or makeup, or go to a specific, vacation spot that you probably can't afford, but you feel like you need to do that so that you can get an ounce of the feeling that influencer has. But don't even get me started on guacamole. I swear for a little while there, everyone I knew was buying avocados for their toast or telling me how much they can't get enough of that guac that some restaurant has. I do not care about your goddamn California avocados or your fresh made guacamole. Just give me the salsa instead. Anyway, I guess what I'm getting at is that Larry Cohen had a really great idea of how to parody the consumerism and how much advertising or other features of this capitalist society that we live in gets people addicted to things that are either not good for them or good for the average person, or gets them to become like almost this kind of brand ambassador. And if it's not guacamole, it's bacon. And this got me so worked up. I complained for the first time publicly about avocados and guacamole. It's that good of an idea that I'm able to kind of go down my own rabbit hole there. Third, how about the stuff itself? I love the idea of what is effectively an alien invasion that comes in the form of something you eat, and it basically hollows you out and takes over your body. It's not really a virus, nor is it really a parasite. It's just kind of more of it's a little bit more, I guess, like pod people, or as that sort of concept, except it doesn't replicate and replace you, but it just basically commandeers your physical form and converts you into a loyal part of the organism as a whole. It's a clever idea, but it's not something I don't think gets used that much. And I love the catchy and very marketable tagline that also becomes a spoken line in the movie itself. Are you eating it, or is it eating you? It's kind of a perfect line of dialogue that can ultimately become the movie's own way to market that as a product about a product that has been marketed to people to ultimately addict them to it. It's really clever how that is. And I love how the stuff looks. I mean, it's kind of, it does draw a lot of comparisons to the Blob, and it should. But like, I love the idea of this thing that kind of does look appetizing if you think about it as a dessert product. I mean, it looks like marshmallow cream or whipped cream or something. It looks appetizing, but it's this very dangerous thing you don't want in your body and you don't want it touching you. So I love how they kind of created this movie monster that is, that's just this kind of white goop that's like melted ice cream. It's great. It's a great, silly kind of idea that works very well and does create something to really kind of think about, like how, easy it would be for an alien parasite to basically take you over if it can make itself look like something you want inside your body. Anyway, that wraps up this week's Monster Mondays. You can catch new episodes of Monster Mondays each Monday at filmseizure.com, but don't forget to follow Film Seizure at Facebook, Threads, Instagram, and Blue Sky. You can also subscribe to Film Seizure to get both the Film Seizure podcast on Wednesday afternoons, as well as the Monster Mondays Monday afternoon show at your favorite podcast providers. We also upload our stuff to YouTube. And you can also check out my website, bmovieanima.com, to read new reviews every Friday morning. Next time, the summer begins as we move out of the 80s and move into the 70s. And we have 5 70s movies to talk about. And we'll begin with a 1972 docudrama movie telling us the tales of the Falk Monster in The Legend of Boggy Creek. And until next week, stay spooky.